I am just curious, Steve. Obviously, you haven't had too many days and you haven't had full team workouts, but have you given a whole lot of thought or any kind of clarity on what kind of offensive style you'll run? I know you've talked about a blend, but do you know kind of a way to describe what kind of offensive style you're looking to run?
Yeah, I think we want to play an up-tempo style. We want to push the ball in transition and play in the open court. And in the half court, we want to make quick decisions, space the floor, and take advantage of our playmaking and shooting. We have some centers that are vertical threats as well, so we can really put pressure on people above the rim, but also stretch them and make the court big and difficult to cover.
Next question comes from Malika Andrews with ESPN.
Hi there. I'm wondering in this year where a pandemic is happening and you're a new head coach, Steve, if you're viewing this as a completely different training camp than anything that anyone has kind of ever gone through, and that's how you're planning it, or if you're taking a traditional training camp and picking other coaches' brains that have done that and building up from there, even though this year is kind of so different?
That's a great question, Malika. I don't know if I have an answer. I would say that we definitely come in saying let's be fluid and flexible because, as you know, any day things could change. So we have to be able to roll with it and be able to adjust and adapt. Fortunately for me, I have an incredible staff. So they're making me confident and comfortable, and we're building something together. It's very collaborative. So I'm able to lean on my experiences, but also their practical experiences as head coaches or assistant coaches. And so we have, almost always a consensus, and we elicit everybody's opinions and try to build that consensus in a smart and strategic way.
Next question comes from Greg Logan with Newsday.
Hi, Steve. I'm just wondering if you can tell me how much your offense will look like the offense you played with D'Antoni and Phoenix, and like the offense he used the past 4 years. And have you guys discussed ways to tweak it or fit it to the personnel in a unique way?
I definitely think there'll be similarities, but I also think, it's clearly the way we played in Phoenix is very common to today's game. So you look around the league, a lot of teams really look in some ways similar to that. But we will, have some similarities, but you also have to really consider and blend with the personnel you have. So, and some of that is strategic, some of that is organic, and we're going to let it, grow and let those understandings and relationships form and try to create an offense that is heavily built upon the personalities and the skill sets of our players.
Next question comes from Bruce Beck with NBC New York.
Hey, Steve, you have a lot of weapons. How do you get guys to share the ball, to be unselfish, to utilize all of the options that you have?
I feel really fortunate we have an unselfish group. I think we have guys that enjoy playing the right way. You look at Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, they're not only incredible basketball players with huge skill levels, but their IQ and acumen is incredible. They're instinctively very intelligent on the court. So, they take the lead there. But, you look at the depth we have, there isn't, any ball stoppers more really. So I feel really fortunate that is an asset and a strength of our team, that we have depth. We have multiple guys that can shoot and play make. We have centers that can, dive to the basket and be a threat. And so you have a lot of balance there, and guys typically, in this group want to play the right way.
Our next question comes from Alex Schiffer with The Athletic.
Hey, Steve, kind of piggybacking off of the staff question from earlier, have you kind of divvied up responsibilities with all those guys as to, putting some guys in charge of the offense and other guys more involved in the defense, or you've gone in a different direction than that?
No, you know, Jock Vaughn will lead the defense and Mike D'Antoni will lead the offense. But, you know, we really want it to be very collaborative. So we want everyone to have input on both sides of the ball. I think in some respects, I've gone this direction more so because I'm a rookie coach and I want to be able to look to one person to say, you know, what are we doing here? What's our adjustment? Where are we in context of our schemes at either end? So, you know, perhaps if I had been doing this for a bunch of years, we may be completely flat, and we all are collaborating. But I think we want the spirit of collaboration. But those two are going to lead each side of the ball.
Our next question comes from Christian Winfield with the New York Daily News.
Hey, Coach. First and foremost, happy belated Thanksgiving. Hope you enjoyed that time.
Thank you.
You and your family. Can you give us a status update on Kevin and Kyrie as it pertains to their injuries and how far along they've come in their rehab? And I guess as a second to that, how do you see or how do you envision those two playing off of each other on the court when they can finally take the court together for the first time?
They both are in great states of health, so to speak. They're healthy, in shape, and look great. So that's obviously the best scenario for us after a long layoff for both of them. You know, the way they play off each other is a gift. You know, they both incredibly skilled, talented, both can score, play make, and also intelligent. So they will be a great partnership out there, and they also will be a great partnership for other guys on the team. You know, because of how diverse their skill sets are and how many things they can do with the ball, how they make people around them better. And so, you know, we're fortunate to have two players of that caliber.
Our next question comes from Otis Livingston with CBS New York.
Steve, we hear so much about culture around the NBA. What's going to be the culture under your team, and what are they going to be known for?
Good question. You know, culture is, a system of values and behaviors. So, you know, hopefully if you want to know what we value, I think it's competitiveness and connectivity. So hopefully you're going to see a team that is incredibly competitive, connected, has a great spirit, and loves the game. And that's the type of atmosphere we're trying to create here at the practice center. And hopefully that emulates our style and what you see and feel when we're on the court.
Our next question comes from Brian Mahoney with the Associated Press.
Hi, Steve. You guys are only playing a couple times in the preseason game-wise. Do you have any idea yet how much or if you'll use both Kevin and Kyrie in that situation? And given how long Kevin's layoff is and how short this preseason is, you know, how soon do you envision any player can kind of be ready to go once the season starts?
Well, the second question is maybe both of them is constantly to be determined and to be analyzed. We have to be very fluid, and we have to constantly be willing to adapt and change course, analyze where we're at and make smart decisions. But, we want to use those two preseason games to get ourselves prepared as possible to play the real thing. So, you know, we'll see the state of their health through training camp, their energy levels, what they need. But those games are important for the group in general, just to have those dress rehearsals and to prepare us to play and get off to a start where we're organized and prepared and confident enough to go out there and compete at a high level.
Our next question comes from David Aldridge with The Athletic.
Hey, Steve. Good to talk to you, man.
Hey, Dave. How are you?
I'm good, man. With all of your unique experiences over your career as a player and then coach, development, ownership with soccer, and I know you think about these things a lot. How do you think you will reimagine or maybe do the head coach job differently than someone who maybe has a more conventional coaching background?
Good question. I would say the immediate answer is I hope I've come in knowing what I don't know and knowing where, I'm going to need to gain experience. And fortunately, we have an incredible staff. So I'm highly attuned to the fact that I got a lot to learn. And of course, I have my experiences and my beliefs, but I also have to be open to what I don't know and what I can learn, and how we can fit all those pieces together and to be as efficient as possible, and create an environment that is, not only really fun and challenging for our players, but is producing a style of play that's incredibly competitive. So, you put that all in the mix, and for me, it kind of is like the question. It's a blend of all those experiences I've had in and outside of the sport with, the practical experiences that my staff has.
Our next question comes from Tina Cervasio with Fox 5 New York.
Hi, Steve. I didn't get a chance to talk to you at your opening press conference, so welcome to Brooklyn.
Thanks, Tina.
On paper, you obviously have a deep and talented roster, but with all the challenges we're seeing in the NFL because of the coronavirus and the NBA not being in a bubble for this season, there's like a whole nother layer of contingency plans, Steve. How do you deal with that? How do you both, make sure your players stay safe, but also have an entire roster ready when you could lose, whether it's a star player or a supplementary player, for weeks at a time?
Great question. I think we have to be fluid and adaptable. It's you almost have to look at it as when, not if. Things are going to happen. It's the nature of living in a global pandemic. So we're taking extreme measures to make sure we're as safe as possible. Our medical staff is outstanding. I think the league's doing a great job, as they've proven in the bubble. With the virus, but I think this is different without a bubble. So everyone's got to be alert and reactive, and there's going to maybe times when we do face challenges due to it, and we have to look at the bright side and the positive side. So first and foremost, the health of our players. If a player is unavailable, it's an opportunity for the rest of the team to grow and galvanize in support of that player and without them. So we always will look to the positive opportunities that arise and try to be as thoughtful and diligent with how we treat this virus and all the measures that we're taking to make sure we stay safe.
Our next question comes from Ian Begley with SNY.
Steve, thank you for doing this. Hope you and your loved ones are well. You mentioned that Kevin and Kyrie are in great health, but leading into this season, the 72 games, are there any plans in place for them to kind of have regular rest, maybe sit out a game that's scheduled in advance? Or do you, if they're healthy, are they going to go all 72?
I would say there's no plan in place, but it's probably unlikely that they both play 72 games. It's been such a layoff for both of them, and in particular Kevin, with coming off one of the toughest injuries to deal with as a basketball player. We have to be very careful with him and his adaptation process back into the game. Kevin's done everything you could have ever asked to put himself in this position. He is truly a gift for all of us, with not only his talent, but his love for the game and the joy he brings in the building every day. Perhaps we have to protect him from himself in a way, because he brings so much joy and passion to the sport. He's so eager and hungry after such a long layoff in his prime. But he's done all the hard work, and he's put himself in this position. And now we have to make sure that it's a sustainable adaptation and that he's able to stay the course and play the long game.
Our next question comes from Joe Varden with The Athletic.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for doing this. Two questions kind of wrapping up into one. Since you've been hired, there's been a couple of, eyebrow raisers as it relates to the Nets. One was Kyrie was on Katie's podcast, and he says, it's like we don't have a coach. We can all be a coach. And Katie kind of agreed, and they talked about that. And then the other one, of course, is that James Harden apparently wants to come to Brooklyn, and this all came about because he was working out in LA with KD and maybe Kyrie, I don't know, but they talked about it. That was a pretty big storyline. And so my question for you is how did you react to all of these things just so early in your first coaching job? both to what Kyrie said and then this much bigger thing about, the defending league scoring champ wanting to come play on a team that already has KD and Kyrie.
Can you repeat the Kyrie quote? I never heard that one. Just kidding.
So this was like
I'm just kidding. I listened, or I didn't listen, but I read what he'd said, and I think it was one phrase at the end of a bunch of things he said about being excited about having me in this position and coaching, and then maybe he took it to another level that would seem to grab all the headlines, which is fine. I mean, I'm in a fortunate position where I get to coach Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So, what we've built here in a short period of time, with our how we're gonna practice and play, I think is exciting. I'm thrilled to get to coach those guys. So if one statement that I don't think necessarily, was completely wasn't meant the way it was taken by the press, that doesn't bother me at all. So I enjoy working with those guys. I feel incredibly fortunate to work with them, and this is going to be a blast for me to get to coach those guys every day. As far as the Harden rumors, I don't know. I mean, I love our team. I love our roster, and I coach these guys and trying to build something incredibly competitive and enjoyable for our players and staff. And that's a question for someone in a different role.
Our next question comes from John Schumann with NBA.com.
Hey, Coach. You mentioned that Jock would be in charge of the defense, and that's a defense that ranked in the top 10 last year. So I want to know, how much do you want to just sort of keep the structure of that defense in place, and what do you think the personality of this team will be on that end of the floor?
Well, it's important. It's a priority for sure. We realize that we're trying to compete for a championship, and we have to be excellent defensively. So, it's going to be a process. I think the defense last year changed in the bubble. So I think Jock started to put his imprints and adjustments into the defense and the performances in the bubble. I think that many of them were similar and aligned with the way I see things. So we've had a really enjoyable process of going through the film and looking around the league and figuring out what we think suits our team and the game the way it's played nowadays. So there will be obviously some commonality with the roster, and there will also be some differences and adjustments. But I think JV's adjustments in the bubble were going towards where we've landed with it. And at the same time, it is a work in progress. It's something that we're going to build all year. And, we may have some rough patches as we adapt, but we realize that this is something that we got to stick to and continue to work on and invest in every day if we're going to be good enough to compete for a championship.
Our next question comes from Justin Walters with Pix 11.
Hi, Steve. Just following up on that championship mention. You mentioned that you guys have championship aspirations on day one of your press conference. How difficult is it going to be for you this year to try to reach that goal, but understanding some things are just going to be out of your control with this pandemic and it being so fluid?
It's a great challenge without a pandemic. So, to win a championship is so difficult. We realize that. We recognize that. We recognize also you need a little bit of luck to win sometimes. So, but we're going to focus on ourselves, what we can control, what we can do every day to make ourselves grow and be on the right path to getting better and better. And I think that's even more important when we're in such an unstable world. So we'll focus on what we can control. We'll focus on our group and put all the energy we have into this, while, like we said, remaining fluid as possible to, all the different possibilities in these strange times. And we got to enjoy it too. So we'll keep building, and we'll keep pushing our guys and challenging them, and we'll build something really good.
Our next question comes from Simone Sandri with La Gazzetta dello Sport.
Wow, Simone Sandri.
Hey, Steve. how surreal is for you to be Mike's coach after everything you guys went through, and what do you think is gonna bring to the coaching staff?
Well, he's already everyone's favorite in the office, so he's definitely brought his typical personality and charm and sense of humor, and for somebody who's coached, been a head coach in this league for so long and had so much success, he's incredibly humble, but he's given me a tremendous amount of comfort. It's someone you have a relationship with to kind of help guide. I can just call him, text him, knock on his door, or whatever it may be, to gain his thoughts. And I do that with all our coaches. I really seek all their opinions and all their knowledge. But obviously Mike's been in the position where he's done this for so long and has such a unique perspective and skill set. So he's been incredible for me, but he's also just been great every day here in the building. And I think people have gravitated to him quickly.
Our next question comes from Bob Windrum with Nets Daily.
Hi, Steve. You've only been a coach for a little bit, but who
undefeated?
Huh?
Undefeated.
Who or what has surprised you during your tenure?
Do you mean in respect to the players or the job? Sorry, they might have cut you off. What has surprised me in my tenure? I would say just the amount of information and people there is to coordinate. I think that's been something that has been let's say for sure an adaptation for me and a challenge, but also incredibly welcome. Like it's incredible how much support and how mature all our departments are, and how well staffed and how thoughtful and what a foundation we have here. So for me to slide into this position is very privileged because of all the work that's been done to build our departments and our staffs, and that's been challenging to kind of be able to survey all that information, to integrate it with the people, the personalities. But it's also been one of the most rewarding and enjoyable parts of the job.
Our next question comes from Steve Lichtenstein with WFAN.
Hi, Steve. I just wanted to ask you about the acquisition of Jeff Green and how that impacts the different type of variety of lineups that you can have on the court at any given moment.
Well, first of all, we get an incredible vet in our locker room who's just has a great way about him, incredible personality to help lead and give us that veteran presence. As far as on the floor, he's obviously very versatile, and he's a player that came into the league as a perimeter player, but now I think he possibly his best position is at center, and so he gives you that small ball five. So it's a pleasure to be able to coach him, to have him fit into our group, to help him get on board as quickly as possible. Is a pleasure because he is such a great guy and he brings a different profile to our team.
Our next question goes back to Greg Logan with Newsday.
Steve, you're so very deep at the 1 through the 3 positions. Does that pretty much ensure that Kevin will play primarily at the 4? And then secondly, how difficult will it be with all that depth at those perimeter positions to work out a rotation and get playing time for guys who need it?
It's a great problem to have. We have a great roster, incredible depth, lots of competition there. We have versatility, obviously, on the perimeter. I think Kevin, probably guards the 4 and plays all 5 positions on offense. He's a positionless player, so he can play 1 through 5 on either side of the ball. But that does save us a little bit in that it gives more minutes and spots in those 3 perimeter spots. So. But it's all to be determined. Where we have that flexibility, and that's a fortunate position to be in. But I think clearly that does solve a little bit of a problem that he is so versatile that he opens up minutes for perimeter players.
Our next question goes back to Malika Andrews with ESPN.
Steve, you mentioned being quickly reactive in terms of the coronavirus and kind of alert to everything that's going on, but this is a disease where oftentimes you need to be proactive. I'm wondering how you're talking to your players who fall into an age demographic that oftentimes don't take this virus as seriously just because the consequences aren't as serious for them, how you're kind of discussing the severity of what is going on and guiding them in terms of what they need to be doing to stay healthy and make it so games can go on?
That's a great question. I mean, I think that covers society. And the virus is deadly, but it's not as effectual to the younger generation. So that puts us in a very strange position where we still need to be as cautious as possible. At the same time, it isn't as prescient for the younger generation, but our guys have been incredibly mature about it. Many of them, unfortunately, have already had it, but we still don't know anything about this virus relatively. So I've mentioned to them being careful because of the consequences, not only to their health, their family's health, but also our season. But our medical staff does a great job with our protocols, and that's the bottom line is that they put us in a structure and system to be as safe as possible and follow our protocols and give ourselves a chance to come out of this as safe as possible. And not just for ourselves and our families, but for the greater society. And hopefully because of that, we can have as safe a season as possible.
Our next question goes back to Brian Lewis with the New York Post.
I presume I can address this to Sean. I am curious, obviously there are things that you can and can't talk about, but if you've re-signed Ellie and if you re-signed Chris and added Ellie, does that math puts you at 21, correct? So does that portend another move? And have you talked to, some of the guys like Karras and Spencer and Jared Allen, whose names have constantly come up in trade rumors? Have you talked to them directly about that sort of thing?
Thanks, Brian. To answer your first part of the question, I think we're just looking at a competitive training camp. Who can come in here, compete for spots. It's going to be wide open. For two-way spots for G League and so forth, and we'll go from there. So, I don't think anybody has a head up on anybody else in regards to the players you mentioned. In regards to addressing the trade rumors, I think I've said before, it's just about having honest conversations with these guys. So, our doors are always open. They can always come in here and address it with me if they hear something or want to get something off their chest. And Steve is the same way. So, between Steve and I both, to be quite frank, we've had these conversations with numerous guys and just kept them, at ease as much as you possibly can. I mean, it's a strange business. It's the tough part of the business where, your names are constantly going to be floated out in the media. And there's no way around it really, but you just have to be honest with them and say, look, this is what's happening. Well, this is what's not happening. And you'll be the first to know if something ever does.
Our last question for Sean and Steve comes from Christian Winfield with the New York Daily News.
Hey, Sean, this question is for you. Obviously, this team has championship aspirations for this season and the years to come, but just assessing the roster where it's at now, what do you feel, if anything, this team needs to be able to get over that hump and truly compete for these championships? Is there a piece or two or positional that you need to address still this offseason, or do you feel like this team is ready to go compete as is right now?
Well, it's a great question. I think it's one that will have to remain fluid throughout the season. As Steve used that term quite a bit. We're going to have to be fluid with our roster. We'll just see how it goes. We'll see how training camp plays out. It's a competitive group. It's a competitive bunch. They're going to want to be out there and competing for not only a spot on the team, but playing time and so forth. So, I look forward to getting with the coaches, with our front office, and really debating as we go through training camp and seeing, who, if what we need to make changes, whether it's on the periphery of the roster or we make some bigger moves. But the good news is we've got a great bunch of guys here, and I think everybody has bought into what's at stake and the common goal, at the end of this, which is refreshing and great, and it'll be fun to see how it all plays out.